Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the 2025 NBA draft class is starting to heat up, and we have multiple names that are on our radar. This is probably the highest I've been on the draft since I've started covering the draft, which is 2023 and 2024. Outside of Wemby, a man in the 2023 draft class, I think there are a lot of all-star potential type of players in these drafts. And I've been doing a lot of mock drafts coming into this 2025 cycle. I've done maybe 10 to 15 already, and I've started to do mock drafts every single week. I think I've slowed down on them just a little bit. We're going to get another mock draft this week, so watch out for that. But today we're going to be doing something different. Today is going to be a point guard and shooting guard big board, so basically guards. And I'm going to do this for forwards as well, and I'm going to do this as centers, 4 centers. We actually have 15 names on this list, so we're going to be talking about 15 point guards or shooting guards on this list. And I want to say I factored in how these players are playing right now and the potential I have for these players. And for all the guys that know, I am really big on the draft class, or I'm just really big on player evaluating and prospect evaluation. So I try to do this as much as I possibly can. And with all that being said, let's get into our big board. Okay, so at number 1, I have Dylan Harper, the point guard out of Rutgers. He's about 6'5" or 6'6". He shows a really nice handle to the ball, especially in half-court situations. That makes him very, very intriguing as the number 2 prospect on the board entirely. I think Dylan Harper has a lot of craftiness around the rim, whether it's finishing around taller, more athletic players, or just finishing around multiple players when players collapse on him. I do think he is a solid playmaker. The only thing that I would really critique on him yet is I don't know if that mid-range shot making is the best or where I would want it to be for him, but I also think that can improve. We've seen a lot of really nice shot making to Dylan Harper's game, a lot of creation with the ball in his hand and in half-court situations to where if he is going to go to a very bad team, which likely he should be the second pick in the draft, I think he'll be able to take on that volume scoring and still be pretty solid at it as a rookie player. Another thing I think is also very intriguing with Dylan Harper's game is just him being so, I don't know how to put it. I think he reacts well to what defenses throw at him at the nick of time. Like, let's say his decision-making is a lot faster than you would think as a lead guard this young, to where if he does get past the defender and teams send help or teams nudge him as he's driving to the rim, he does have a lot of counters with his dribble that can continuously put him in the best spot to score or to get a good look around the rim, to where if he is driving in crowded lanes, I think he has the dribble moves to create necessary space to make good looks for himself and for others. And there's a real world where Washington gets the second pick of the draft and you're going to be getting Dylan Harper, and Dylan Harper is going to be the guy that puts the ball in the basket multiple occasions and be the high volume scorer that you would want him to be from year one. So that's what makes me really confident in Dylan Harper's game, that he can translate to the NBA and show all those signs that he's been showing in college as an elite scorer to become that in the NBA. He's also 6'6". Up next, I have Kasparas the combo guard out of Illinois. I think Kasparas is very intriguing because he's probably one of the best pick-and-roll scorers in this entire draft. The way he's able to handle the ball, look for guys on the floor, his floor vision is amazing. I think he's a great three-point shooter. I think he's a great mid-range shooter, and I think he gets to the free throw line very well. I also think you can add an off-ball play to his game that makes him extremely intriguing. I had Kasparas ranked around my 7th or 8th prospect off the board when this whole thing started, but now he's moved up to where I think he can go number 3 or number 4. So I think that's also really good. I also do think he dribbles the ball just a little bit too much, especially with being able to be so dynamic as an off-ball scorer. I think sometimes he just dribbles the ball a little bit too much in a half-court scenario, to where sometimes it would be better to get off the ball, especially once again having that off-ball type of play to where you can hit motion shots, you can be a spot-up shooter, to where I would love to see him operate as an off-ball player a little bit more. And I also think that's going to make him very portable in the draft, to where you never know where he's going to go. Like, I could see players picking him a little, I could see teams picking him a little higher than what you would expect, but I can also see them picking him a little lower than what you expect. I think his body control around the rim is also very intriguing, the way he's able to finish through contact and the way he's able to add floaters or mid-range shots to his game, or just get a full head of steam and head downhill. I think his first step is really fast. But then again, I don't necessarily see him as a point guard. I don't think he'll be able to carry those main point guard responsibilities throughout an entire 82-game season at the NBA level through his first year. I definitely would be a little bit more comfortable seeing him play off of someone. But I could definitely see a world where he is the starting 2 guard, but when the point guard next to him is on the bench, he's the point guard for the second unit. Sitting at number 3, I have VJ Edgecombe. Now, I know there are a lot of people that may be a little shied away from VJ Edgecombe, especially with the ascension of Tre Johnson and Jeremiah Fears, but I still think VJ Edgecombe is the third best guard in this entire prospect class, just because I think the defensive value that VJ Edgecombe provides, also the transition play, he operates pretty well after the pick and roll as a ball handler, and he gets to the rim pretty well. I think all of that is very intriguing. This is a guy who's going to be able to be a point of attack defender. Now, I've seen websites that say he's about 6'5". I don't necessarily think he's 6'5". He looks a lot more of a 6'3", extremely athletic, extremely vertical leaping ability. I'm saying that completely wrong. But I think the athleticism gives him a little bit of nudge in height to where people would say he is 6'5" or 6'4". I see him a lot as a 6'3" guard, but I do think he'll be able to guard a lot of league guards that are 6'5" or maybe 6'6", because he is extremely athletic. He is very strong. He is a very good offensive rebounder for his size. And I think a lot of people are going to want that. And I think VJ Edgecombe is a very situational pick. If you have a guy that can be a number one offensively for like the Charlotte Hornets, I would love the Charlotte Hornets to go get a guy like VJ Edgecombe if they have the 4th or 5th pick in the draft. And I kind of mentioned him having that really nice ball control ability or that dribble ability in the pick and roll. I would definitely love to see his vision in the pick and roll get a little bit better to where he can spot cutters, spot the guys in the corner, to where he can make those type of passes just a little bit more. And I also would like to see his body control get a little bit better around the rim. Sometimes his body control leads him to missing a lot of shots around the rim, and he's not necessarily getting fouled either. But as a defender in transition, as a playmaker in transition, as just somebody that can fill lanes in transition, I think he's fantastic. I think he's a great offensive rebounder, somebody that can play in a dunker spot with his athleticism. I think he could be a switchblade defensively and offensively, to where this is somebody that's going to be very valuable for a team. Up next, we're going to be talking about Tre Johnson. I have him at number 4, the shooting guard out of Texas University. He stands at about 6'6", and he works really well in the mid-range. I see a lot of three-point game and off-ball play that he has added to his game before coming in. Coming in, I thought he would just be some type of mid-range savant who can work in pick and roll actions or just pin down actions and work in the mid-range, but he's shown a lot more as a scorer, playing in the playing outside of the arc, just shooting threes a lot more, and playing so well in the mid-range and being an off-ball player to its absolute capacity. So I think Tre Johnson is really good in those plays, and I think you can really make some type of sets for him the second he does come into the NBA. And he's also add some post scoring to his bag too, which is also very intriguing. So I think Tre Johnson is really good as a 3-level scorer, or maybe a 2-level scorer, because I don't necessarily love his rim pressure at the moment. I just don't think he has the athleticism to get that first step, and when he does get to the rim, it is kind of ugly. It is kind of some ugly shots. It doesn't necessarily fall all the time. So that would be my critique on him. But as a mid-range scorer, as a shooter, as somebody that can be an off-ball player who can play off-ball, and once he gets really good at that, I think he's going to be lethal. I think he does have a really good shooting form, and I am very, very intrigued with his post play. And I also think this is not necessarily something that I would read into too heavily, but I think his playmaking is really good. When we look at some of his assist numbers, I don't think that necessarily shows how good of a playmaker he actually is. I do think he sees the floor pretty well, so that's something that I would love to see be established a little bit more before we get into the draft process. But as a scorer, he is very sound to me. I do think the rim pressure is a little concerning at this point. And if you guys haven't noticed, I value rim pressure a lot when it comes to these ball handlers and on-ball scorers. So if you're not generating one of the easiest looks at the rim and you're not getting to the free throw line because of it as much, it would really just kind of make me step back just a little bit. But I do really like Tre Johnson's game, if you guys get what I'm saying. Up next, I have Jeremiah Fears, and I do think that it is not that close between, or I don't think it's that far apart or that big of a gap between Tre Johnson and Jeremiah Fears. I think Jeremiah Fears is a very good shooter. I think he's a very good mid-range player. I think he works pretty well out of the pick and roll, and I do think he could be an off-ball type of player. I don't necessarily love the creation with the ball, especially for others. I do see him getting his own shot pretty well, especially in the mid-range and outside the arc, but when we talk about like a guy who I don't think can create much rim pressure in a 1v1 scenario, but I do think he has that first step that Tre Johnson does lack, to where you can get him in a pick and roll and he can create downhill that way. But once again, when he does get around the rim and it's not like the best look, I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to finish through contact well. I don't necessarily think he's going to be able to like really finish around the rim at a high level when he is contested, just because I do think he has a pretty slim frame. But when you add that shooting and that 3-point shooting and the mid-range shooting and the off-ball play that he does provide, I think that's still very valuable. It's just I don't think he has the frames to be able to finish through contact like some of these guys on this list. And I think his first step is valuable in pick and roll situations or cutting to the basket, but in a 1v1 scenario when you're going to be playing a lot more athletic guys at the upper level, I don't know if his first step is enough for it to be just like a consistent rim finishing type of guard. Now, adding the shooting does help with that a lot, but I don't know. He stands at 6'4" too. He's not like Tre Johnson's height. That's why I would go with Tre Johnson ahead of him as of right now. Now, up next at number 6, I have Labaron Philon, the point guard out of Alabama. I do think that he is a very good point of attack defender. I don't necessarily think his offensive game has caught up to the defensive signs that he's shown so far, but I do still think he is very intriguing as a transitional type of player, somebody that can cut to the basket. I don't necessarily know if you would want him to really take a lot of on-ball responsibilities, but the point of attack defense I think is very significant. He shows a lot of really good, intriguing signs as being somebody that can get downhill, but as a shooter, as a playmaker, I don't know if that's something that he can add to his game. As of right now, I do think it can come with time, but as of right now, I don't necessarily see him as a shooter or a playmaker. I see him more as a point of attack defender and a complementary piece that can put pressure on the rim and finish at the basket. I think Ben Saraf right now has a lot of really good feel for the game. I do think he is a little left-handed dominant, but I do like his court vision in a half-court setting. I do think he can be a very intriguing pick-and-roll creator, but he does necessarily rely on a lot of mid-range jump shots, and he doesn't necessarily make them a lot. So in the NBA, if you are leaning on a very inefficient jump shot and you are very inefficient from that jump shot, I don't necessarily know how good you can be as an offensive player, but I'm banking on his size at 6'6", his ball handling, and the form of his jump shot isn't horrible. I do also really love his play vision, but there are just a few things that are, I think, a little would give you a little bit of pushback as a prospect for Ben Saraf, but I am necessarily higher on him than I think a lot of people would be. But I do see some potential there to where if he can start knocking down those jump shots efficiently, he can be one of the better players in this draft class. I do think Boogie Fland has been very intriguing to start off with his stint in Arkansas. There is a few things I do have issues with. There are some things that I do really like. I do really like his ball handling. I think his dribbling and his shot creation is very good. I think he can hit any shot on the floor, which is also very intriguing as a three-point shooter, as somebody that can drive to the rim relentlessly. I think his first step is really good. I do think his pull-up shooting is really good. Now, I don't necessarily love his playmaking, and I don't really love his off-ball play either. I think the ball sticks with him a lot, and as a guy who is not one of the top prospects in this draft, and also a guy that's not going to have the offense built around him, you would love to see him be some type of guy that can play off-ball, but from the games I've seen of him, he doesn't necessarily have a desire to do that as much. But if teams need a guard that's going to come off the bench and really give a spark for the bench unit and can create with the ball in his hand, I think Boogie Fland is probably the best guy, one of the best guys on the board at doing that. But I would love to see a lot more off-ball play from Boogie Fland before I move him any further in this list. Up next, I have Kam Jones, and I think he's a senior, standing at about 6'5", and is a National Player of the Year candidate. I think he's one of the most portable guys in this draft, and I think he's also one of the most polished scorers out of these guards that I've brought up. I think he's a little bit more polished than guys like Labaron, Ben Saraf, Boogie Fland, VJ Edgecombe, maybe even Tre Johnson at times. I think he has a talent of just creating good shots for himself. I think he drives to the rim efficiently. I think he knocks down his jump shots pretty efficiently, to where if you're a team that's looking to contend and you want some more guard rotation players, I think Kam Jones should be at the top of that list. This is a guy who can shoot the mid-range, who can shoot the three, who can get to the rim pretty easily. He's a very strong guard as well, so he can create pretty good shots for himself around the rim. Just somebody that you can see filling a role as a player, but you wouldn't probably want to take if you want him to be a volume scorer, but somebody that can get in, fit in, take the right shots, and play within a role in the offense that you are already having. So I think that's what makes him really valuable. At as we all know, Egor Demin started off his career in the college basketball scene really hot. He was knocking down his shots. He was creating shots for himself. But as of late, he hasn't played as well. And these are because of some of the limitations that he had coming into the season. Some of the discrepancies or some of the concerns I had for him coming into the season is his athleticism, him not being able to be the ball handler that you would necessarily think, especially being a lead guard for a team. I thought that was always really concerning. I don't think he has the athleticism to create something or the ball handle to create something with the ball in his hand at the efficiency of other guys that I have ahead of him. But him being 6'9" and me seeing some life in his jump shot to where I do like his form, and I do think he could be a very solid shooter in the NBA. And I also think he can attack mismatches with his handle, whether it's attacking closeouts or maybe just already getting the ball with a head of steam to the basket or pulling up from mid-range. I think those things could be really good. And his floor awareness and his floor vision isn't the worst, but I would not have him as a lead guard. I would have him as a 2 or maybe even a 3. But right now he's listed at the guard position, so I'm going to keep him on this guard list. Definitely think he has potential, but I think some people, including myself, fell a little bit too in love with his early start to the season. And now that he's starting to regress a little bit more, we're starting to see him play against more talent. All the concerns that I had for him coming in are starting to come back. I think Jase Richardson has shown a lot of intriguing things at the college basketball level at Michigan State. But once again, he is a very short guard at 6'3". He's probably going to be playing the off guard or the 2 guard. I don't necessarily think he is the type of guard that can set the table for an offense as of yet, but he shows some really intriguing signs of being a solid playmaker in decisions and in quick decisions. So I like that as well. I like his rim pressure. I like his shooting, but there's nothing that necessarily sticks out to me to the point where he has to obviously be above the guys that are ahead of him. So as of right now, I do think he's a solid contributor to a winning team. I do think he makes the right decisions more often than not. I do think his shooting can be very good at times. So he's still a very good player. I just don't know if I would have him much higher on this list. Up next, I finally have Nolan Traore, who is somebody that was a top 10 prospect coming into this whole process for me. I still really am holding out hope for Nolan Traore just because I do really like his rim pressure. I do like how he puts pressure on the rim. Now, is he the best finisher? No. But with his quickness and his ball handling and the way he's able to split pick and rolls and split blitzes, I think he can become a very good guy that could pressure around the rim and will become a decent to really good finisher around the rim. And I said this with Scoot Henderson. I think we have the base of a really good point guard, which is the rim pressure that Nolan Traore does provide. Now we can add the playmaking out of that, because once you do create rim pressure, you're going to create a lot more open looks for the guys around you. So he is a good passer. I do think his decision making has to get a little bit better, but once we add on that, now we'll have somebody that can create pressure and play make out of those pressured looks. So I think that's a building block to what they already have. But as of right now, he's just not a good shooter. He doesn't necessarily play off the ball, and he's not the best defender either. So I can't put him higher on this list based on what I think he can be. Now, Nique Clifford is a 6'7" guard out of Colorado State, I believe, stands at about 6'7". I don't necessarily see the athletic burst. I do think he is really good in transition, and I do think he is a solid finisher around the rim, but I do think he has to lean a lot more on his craftiness instead of his first step in these on-ball type of situations. But the thing is, he's a really good shooter, so I think he could be an off-ball player. I think he could be an on-ball player, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to be creating a lot of rim pressure. I see a lot of Chris Middleton as of right now, but we're going to save the comparisons for later. But I do see Nique Clifford being one of the better complementary players in the NBA pretty soon, so I'm pretty high on his upside. I think Myles Byrd is a really good two-way prospect. I think he does play defense well in the transition and on ball. I do think he's a very good slasher, somebody that could put the ball on the floor and get to the rim very efficiently. I do think his jump shot is very ugly at the moment right now, and I don't necessarily know how much I would bank on him becoming a very good shooter in the NBA, but only time will tell. And lastly, at number 15, I have Ian Jackson, who is somebody I had a lot higher in my original mock, somebody that would probably be towards the bottom of the lottery or right outside the lottery. He does show a lot of intriguing signs as a scorer, as an on-ball creator and shooter, but I do think his real upside lands on the defensive side of the ball. I do think he has a pretty good tenacity on that side to where he can become a really good defender, but the scoring upside does give me some hope that he can become a really good player in the NBA, but once again, only time will tell. So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That is my guard big board, the top 15 of the guards in this 2025 NBA draft. If there's any names that I did leave out, I know Kon Knipple is looked at as a shooting guard. I look at him more as a small forward, so he'll be on my forwards list. But do you guys think there's any names that I left out? And are there any names you guys would like to see me talk about more? Make sure you let me know in the comment section. We are going to be doing a forwards list within the next few days. I don't know if it's going to be this week or next week, but it's going to be coming pretty soon. We're going to be doing forwards and centers, and then we're going to do my overall, probably top 45 big board. So if you guys are looking forward to that content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, and make sure you guys comment. And if you guys like this type of content, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm out. Peace.